My name is Gasia, Mikaelian, and I'm an anchor reporter at KTVU Fox 2 News in San Francisco in California's Bay Area. We're going to talk about the impact the coronavirus pandemic is having on families specifically and essential workers. Let's welcome to the discussion Ray Gurn, founder and CEO of Higher Ground Education, which owns and operates Guidepost Montessori Schools. Also, welcome to Julia Neely, head of school at Guidepost Montessori in Emeryville, which is also in the San Francisco area. Also, a welcome to Christina Morales. You're a parent, you're a Montessori family, you are also an essential worker. Thank you all for joining me.
Pleasure.
Let's start with you, Ray. Tell me about the Emergency Care for Essential Workers program.
Sure. So we're a network of Montessori schools, about 50 schools across the world, majority in the United States. And as we closed our schools in mid-March, it became apparent to me, I was speaking on a few panels and advising a few groups, but it became apparent to me that the need for childcare for our critical workforces, first responders, doctors, nurses, was pretty significant and actually mission critical in terms of having an effective response to COVID. And so I didn't see enough childcare operators stepping up, and so it made sense for us to both model what that looks like and to offer our 50 sites, repurpose them to become emergency care centers for essential workers. So we very quickly mobilized and we very quickly made that pivot. We were very thoughtful about which staff to invite. Obviously, we had to really think seriously about the vulnerabilities of staff that are immunocompromised or live with elderly people, but got some advice from medical professionals and started offering the service just to make sure that our essential workers could focus on their important work while we focused on making sure that their children were safe and not only cared for and loved, but also engaged.
And Julia, what's it like to reopen a school amid a pandemic? What's different now at Guidepost in Emeryville that's changed in recent weeks?
Oh, well, the love and the care is the same. The mission is always the same, where we know we're here to be of service. And I think that is what drove us to want to open up our schools immediately, because we are a company that really believes that we are here to be of service to families and children and to the community. And we wanted to get involved immediately so we could start supporting the families doing the work. And the response has been really amazing. It's been emotional. We receive emotional responses from families. They're crying, they're thankful, they can't believe we exist. One of the differences that we're seeing on our campus and with this ECEW program, Emergency Care for Essential Workers program, is that the safety and health precautions and measures that we're taking on a campus level are more intense. We're ensuring that the children have space between each other, that the classroom size is smaller, there's less furniture in the environment. We have one teacher in the classroom. They don't go on the playground together, so they don't commingle, the classrooms don't commingle, and they disinfect throughout the day even more than they ever have. The children arrive to school with their temperature being taken by the assistant head of school or the administrator on campus, who's wearing a mask and gloves and doing not just a normal health check, they're doing a complete health check, making sure there is no illness that the child has. We do not want children on campus if they have colds or a fever at all. The parents, sometimes they come on campus, but they're not in the classrooms. So that's another thing that we're doing. And there's just a lot of precautions that we're taking with food handling. And so it's been a really beautiful service that we're providing. The guides or the teachers who are on campus feel like it's a privilege to be on campus. They love doing the work and feel like they're part of the mission of making a difference in not just our own campus community, but through the external community. And also what I'm finding remarkable is how many families or how many parents don't realize that they're essential workers. They think that you have to be an emergency care provider like a doctor or a nurse, but that isn't the case. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who are actually qualified for this. So we recommend that you can email us and ask if they are essential workers or not, to double check.
Let's talk to one of those essential workers. Christina Morales, you're with us. You live there in Emeryville. You're a Montessori family. Tell me a little bit about what both you and your husband do as essential workers and what this option has meant to your family.
So my husband is a member of the staff at San Francisco State University at the biology department. So he has to be on campus to take care of some of the research animals that he uses on the campus. And so that needs maintenance in order for those animals to stay alive. So he has to be on campus at least a couple days a week to take care of that. And in addition, classes didn't stop at all. So he still has to teach classes during the week, which means preparing all the lectures that he was supposed to give live, and now he's supposed to give them on a Zoom platform. So that took a little bit of time for him to arrange those sorts of lectures. As for myself, I'm a microbiologist and I work in public health. And so before all of the school shutdowns and shelter in place started, we had already been planning at my workplace for a long time to put things in place to prepare for this pandemic. So as things were going along, both my husband and I were just doing our regular thing. And things, at least in my workplace, were already getting a little bit busy working in public health. But it was manageable because we always knew we had the support of our school at Guidepost. And then the shelter in place happened. And then we were like, okay, well, what are we going to do? So what was already a hectic situation for both my husband and myself, I know I was working almost 7 days a week at that point for a few weeks already, became almost impossible. We have 2 young kids, a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old. So they needed a lot of care. They needed a lot of attention. So initially it was just my husband that was taking care of them because he had a little bit more flexibility than I had at the time. So I would check in with him the first week that it started by around noon. And let's just say by noon he was whelmed. And then by 2 o'clock he was overwhelmed with the 2 kids. And so when we found out about the Essential Care for Emergency Workers program through Guidepost, we knew about it pretty early on. We were like, yeah, that's great. Let's look into it. But being in the field that I'm in, of course, I was a little bit hesitant to do it. So we actually joined the program a little bit later than some of the parents did. But after kind of seeing, and we were in touch with some of the parents also, how they liked it. And we were always comfortable with the teachers and the environment itself. After a couple of weeks, we were like, okay, looks like things are looking good at the school. Things are looking good in the Bay Area in terms of this pandemic, and we'll take our precautions also, and we know the school is taking the precautions. So, and for our sanity as well, we enroll them in the school.
Perfect. Well, but when you say you have a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old, I was in your shoes not that long ago, and I can tell you it is exhausting, right? By noon can feel like you've lived a whole week in that small house with those 2 little ones. Ray, it's interesting because the program isn't just open to the very youngest children out there. You guys serve families with children up to 12 years old, am I right?
Can't hear you.
Excuse me, sorry.
No, go ahead. So this goes up to 12-year-olds.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so a little bit varies on which school location and which city, and we work very closely with regulators. In some places, new public schools have more availability for elementary students, so we've tended to focus on really the younger students, the 0 to 6 ages. But we run our program through 12 years old, and depending on the 10-year-old, depending on the 9-year-old. The children are more or less independent and really need that structure. And so we found that there are parents who really want this. And then there are parents who want a Montessori program. And so since we have a virtual Montessori program, we're able to combine those two, where the essential worker can drop off a child at one of our centers and then that child can participate in a virtual program, which is, kind of the full Montessori experience to the extent that it's possible in that type of medium.
Julia, I think back to when we were in preschool, those preschool classes felt like families, right? And, my older son had one preschool family. My little boy, who's just a year and a half younger, had another preschool family. So I wonder what it's like for you. Have you seen children from different families come together and all of a sudden be in a classroom, because that cohesiveness can sometimes take a minute to gel?
When you provide a strong routine, you have a really good daily schedule. It's filled with fun and exciting, calming experiences for the children. And you have staff or teachers who are on board, who are talented, they're knowledgeable, they've been in the classroom before, they know how to operate the day, and they know how to help children transition into a new program. And because the program is only enrolling limited amount of children in small cohorts in each classroom, it's an easier experience for a new child to enter. And we have existing children who are part of our regular programming before and after the pandemic, who are, they really help to transition a younger child. That's what Montessori children are brilliant at. That there's really strong leaders. They know they know all about grace and courtesy. They know how to take care of themselves and their environment, and they're very independent, and they're able to support younger children as well. So far, our experience has just been actually just beautiful. There hasn't been any really difficult transitions at all. So cross our fingers.
Yeah.
But
And if I may add to that, part of what our Montessori perspective gives us is the understanding that children, don't just need love and care. Like they have developmental needs. They need engagement. They need opportunities to concentrate in deep ways. They need opportunities to engage in both gross motor and fine motor activity, and that these are needs. These needs don't pause because there's a virus and there's a pandemic. The needs have to be met. And so I think there's an understanding of learning science and of developmental pedagogy that actually has applicability in precisely these types of situations that are, in some sense, exceptions to the norm.
Well, let's talk to the mom here on the panel. You have your two little ones going to Montessori school still. Christina, have you noticed any change? And 18-month-old children aren't the best verbal communicators, but what about your 3-year-old? What's your older one saying about the experience?
Well, Carmen isn't as verbal as most 3-year-olds, but let's just say that before this whole thing started, she was never a big fan of school anyways. But I think after a month of staying home,
she loves school.
Actually, yeah. She still takes a bit to get engaged at the start of the day. But we found that she doesn't cry as much when we drop her off. And we see the pictures, because usually the guides send us pictures during the day. And she's having a great time. And when I talked to her in the morning about going to school now, the first day, before she went to school the first day, I said, "Oh, you're going back to school tomorrow." And she was like, no school, Mommy, no school. The day after, she was like, "Okay, Mommy, school, okay, yes, okay." And then that was it. So
that's a huge win to go from the arms crossed, no, to like, okay, to now, she sounds like she's very happy. Can you describe for, I feel like especially as parents, we all, when another parent says, "Oh, I struggle in this way," and I think, "Oh my gosh, I struggle in that way," it makes me feel so much better, so much more human. Can you describe whatever conversations or struggle you and your husband may have had over, we're in this pandemic crisis situation, mom and dad have to work, so we need to send you to school. I think some parents think if I'm not within an arm's length of my child 24/7, I'm doing it wrong. But, can you describe that process that you and your husband and really your family may have gone through?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, it took us, we knew of the program, and we were considering our options. Like, should we just keep the girls at home? We know it's a pandemic, my field, I see the numbers all the time. We see what's going on nationally. So it really was quite a couple of days or a few days of conversation that my husband kept going back and forth. Like, should we send them to school? Should we not? Should we keep them at home? What's best for them? What can we realistically do at home for them so that they still keep engaged, that they're not engaging too much in screen time, TV time, and they continue their progress. So it was quite a process for that. My husband and I were just worried, like, okay, what are we going to do if they catch something? How would we even know if they're on the way of catching something with this virus, showing that it can be spread asymptomatically? We waited to see if we had heard anything from other parents, how their progress was going. It was a lot of contemplation on our part, and there were some days leading up to their first day where we said, no, we're just keeping them at home another week. We can wait. Let's see what happens. But eventually, I think the pressures of just being able to do our work, and then seeing that our kids were essentially becoming couch potatoes, just wanting to sit in front of the TV. My older one knew how to do the remote now. She knew the computers and how to slide the mouse over and click to skip ads and close certain programs. It was amazing, but also horrifying, because
Right.
it's like, oh, you know how to do that on your own now.
Yeah. Yeah, you're like, we worked 3 years to keep you away from this, and all of a sudden, in the past 2 weeks, you've become, as much of a tech baby as any other. I want to talk with you real quick, Julia, about some families who might be hearing this discussion, and they might be new to or curious about Montessori, but perhaps not able to immediately jump into some of the programs you're offering. Are there any principles of Montessori that you want parents to keep in mind, whether or not they have an actual Montessori program they can work with?
Well, I'd like to mention something that Ray mentioned as well. It was talking about our family framework that's available to the outside community. Anybody can get onto it, and they can actually sign up for a Family Framework Plus, where they're able to have their own parent concierge who provides structure for them and routine and lessons and ideas, and helps them problem solve issues that they're having at home. But I think the most important part of Montessori that resonates throughout almost every family and throughout my almost 40 years in this field is that Montessori is a gift that we give children. It's a gift that we give them so that they can live a very full and independent life. They learn how to self-regulate. They learn how to care for themselves and others. They learn the cosmic part of learning. They learn all the extensions of learning. And what the foundation provides is this love of learning, so that it propels the child to always want more and more and more. And the more we give them and the more they're capable of learning, the higher learning they obtain, and they self-direct. Montessori children are really different when you see them in a classroom. They're able to focus for long periods of time. They choose activities on their own, and then the teacher watches and observes and sees what lessons that can come next, so that they're following a sequence of learning. But the entire time it's based on what brings children joy. And I think that what we know is that when we love what we do, whether we're a child or an adult, we're going to do our best. And it's going to be most meaningful. And that's the kind of work that children do. They do meaningful activities that bring them joy and bring the proper stimulation of engagement that increases their attention span, increases their focus, and increases their desire for more. And that's what Montessori does. It's beautiful. The environments are prepared. They're beautiful and they're prepared and they're aesthetically gorgeous. The materials are amazing. And at the very young level, it's very tactile, very sensory driven. So most of the materials are through touch and smell and through all their senses, but a lot of tactile experiences where they get to learn by experience.
And finally, Ray, you mentioned that a lot of people hear emergency care for essential workers. And I assume, oh, I have to be a doctor, a nurse, a grocery store clerk. Tell me how people who might be wondering about the program can learn more about it and find out if they and their families are qualified.
If you go to our website, guidepostmontessori.com, there's actually, I think, some resources there in terms of whether you qualify. We follow a lot the kind of state guidelines, so it does vary a little state by state. But people that work in supply chain, veterinarians, I mean, it's a pretty expansive list. It's people that need to work in order, to ensure that all the lights don't go out, right? And so that's a pretty wide and expansive group. We are strict about the definition, where we think that the guidance that we've gotten from, our kind of from government basically is that we need to be more strict, and in other places, the lead that we're following is that, we should kind of be more inclusive. I would say that it's worth checking. If you're in a situation, it's worth checking, it's worth finding out. And I think that there's a lot of sympathy for how hard it is for parents, but also for children. Like, I think that these, if you're distracted with your work, you're kind of less able to meet, the needs of your child. And as I said earlier, their needs don't pause. I would also like to add, in terms of the last question, that if you're at home with your child, I think what you need to optimize for is long extended periods of engagement, and that there is no quick fix. And so one of the pieces of advice we give to parents at home is, you got to put a little bit of work into it. But if you put a little bit of work into it for a week, and you set up routines and you set up work cycles, it pays off. My wife and I, with our 4 and 5 year old, we have a morning meeting, and we say, the morning is work time. Daddy's gonna work, mommy's gonna work, you're gonna work, and and it's real work. And one of them empties the dishwasher. And there's a way in which I think optimizing for developing those routines, and then plugging in the the tools and the things that feel a little bit clickbaity, is the right way to approach it, rather than the other way around, where this thing feels like it's a cure-all. It's not going to work. It's not going to last. You can't just stick a child in front of a screen. You have to develop that framework. And that's really what we've tried to do in our advice.
Well, I will tell you, we had a big, long talk at kind of the beginning of this, after about a week of, freewheeling, breakfast at 10 a.m. It was a mess. And we sat down, the boys, and we said, this is not a vacation. Mommy still has to work. Daddy has things he does around the house. Like, this is serious business. And so we sketched out, a very rough schedule for the day, but I found that as soon as we all kind of clicked into that expectation, you're right, it just moved so much more smoothly. So I really do appreciate that you're giving us advice that any family, not just a Montessori family, can follow. And also you're giving us resources for those of us who are more curious about Montessori and may want to enter. We know we can go to your website. I have to say, we're all parents here, and there is no greater calm in your heart than knowing your children are fine, because that's what then frees up mom and dad to go and do the work that we need to do. So I thank you so much. And I'll start with you, Christina Morales. Thank you so much for joining us. You and your husband are providing essential work and services to those of us who are lucky enough to live here in the San Francisco Bay Area and beyond. Thank you for joining us, Christina. Julia, head of school there at Guidepost Montessori in Emeryville. Thank you. And also thank you to you, Ray Gurn, founder and CEO of Higher Ground Education. If you would like more information about this topic, you can find it at coronavirusnow.com.